Let's welcome back to the program now on Second Amendment Friday. That's why I love sitting in for Dr. G on Fridays, because I get to talk to John R. Lott Jr. John, good to talk to you. How are you, good sir?
Doing great. Glad you're there. Thanks for having me on.
It's good to be here. Whenever Seb has to stay away, or step away, I should say, I'm so glad to sit in, especially when we can talk about our Second Amendment rights. John, there's a big story coming up. You may not recall this bit, but 2 weeks ago, the last time I was in on a Friday for Dr. G, you and I started to talk about your article in the Federalist. And now that we are just a few days away from November 7th, this coming Tuesday, a very important Supreme Court case that you wrote about is nearly upon us. Give us the background here. Tell us what this case is all about, the Rahimi case.
Right. Well, it deals with the issue of what standards courts have to follow to take away a person's guns. So, you might think you can take away a person's guns after a criminal conviction, and that's true. Mm-hmm. But the question is, can you take them after civil cases? And there's a big difference between criminal and civil cases. In criminal cases, you have beyond a reasonable doubt. So you're like 92% certain that the person really is guilty. In a civil case, the standard is a preponderance of the evidence. So you're like 50.1% versus 49.9% certain that the person did something. Essentially, it's a coin flip could determine whether or not a person could lose their guns. And there are other protections in criminal cases. So if you can't afford a lawyer, one is provided for you in a criminal case. In a civil case, no lawyer's provided for you. If you can't afford one, tough luck. And also, you have this issue, there may not even be a hearing that determines whether or not you're going to lose your rights or not. And the case on Tuesday is going to be a difficult case, mainly because of the optics as opposed to kind of the standards that's there. And the reason is because it's named after the defendant there, Rahimi, who's a bad guy. The guy is a drug dealer. The guy has committed many, many felonies, including felonies with guns. In 2020, he had, because of a civil case where he didn't have a lawyer representing him, he lost his right to be able to go and own guns. And the Biden administration is pushing this case, I think, largely because of the optics that are there. They hope that the justices there will say, this guy is a bad guy and he shouldn't have guns, which I agree. But he shouldn't have had guns because he should have been prosecuted for the violent crimes that he had done beforehand, and they didn't prosecute him for those. And so, the question is, are they going to set a standard that's going to make it easy to take away people's guns or not?
Even in civil cases, not necessarily
in civil cases,
in
right,
criminal cases. Yeah, that's a staggering thing.
This won't affect any criminal cases. The only thing that this case deals with is the standard that's used in a civil case. And this has the possibility of really undoing a lot of the good recent precedents we've had with regard to Bruin. So, for example, the Bruin case that the Supreme Court dealt with last year was written by Clarence Thomas. And Thomas wanted to get away from what they call these balancing tests that courts have had, where they go and judges like power. And so when I taught in law schools, one of the things I would always point to is you look at the First Amendment where it says Congress shall pass no law. That seems pretty clear. It's in plain English, no law. But the way the courts have liked to interpret it is Congress shall pass no law unless they have a good reason, and we, the judges, get to determine whether or not it's a good reason, because judges like power, and so they don't like bright lines. And so, you jokingly ask students and stuff, what would they have had to write if they really meant no law? Would they have to write Congress shall never, ever, 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 ever pass a law like that? And Thomas, I think if he could deal with writing a case dealing with the First Amendment, he would make a similar thing that he did with regard to the Bruin decision, where it says you read it and you go and look to see what laws were in effect at that time. The problem is that while you had 4 votes, including Thomas, on that, you had 2 other votes that, with Kavanaugh and Roberts, which pretty much indicated they wanted to go and look at each law as it came along rather than setting some type of precedent. And so the Biden administration is pushing this case with the hopes that they can peel off Kavanaugh and Roberts again on this and get them to agree that they should take these laws on a case-by-case basis rather than having some type of underlying principle there.
John R. Lott Jr. is our guest, and Dr. Lott, that took up most of our time, but in the 1 minute we have left or a little, it's okay. I just want to hit red flag laws because of what happened in Maine, and the shooter up there spent 2 weeks in a mental health facility this past summer, which has led to renewed screams, not cries, but screams for red flag laws. If somebody has a mental condition, they have to be stripped of their guns or they're not allowed to buy guns, regardless of what that mental condition may be. 40 seconds on that.
Right. Well, one thing that everybody is ignoring in the media is that the attack at the bowling alley was another gun-free zone. It had a sign there warning people not to carry, and the person was in for 2 weeks. But what people are also ignoring is that if the mental health care experts at the hospital thought he was a danger to himself or others, there were already laws on the books that would have allowed them to maintain him. Apparently, they didn't think he was a danger to himself or others, which red flag laws, you could temporarily take away a person's guns for a couple weeks or a month without a hearing or without any evidence provided other than just a pure written statement.
John R. Lott is the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. Always great knowledge on Second Amendment Friday. Thank you, John Lott.